The taxi driver's superbrain. Why navigation changes the mind picture this. It's a rainy evening in London. Cars honk, headlights flicker. The air smells of damp pavement. You're sitting in the back seat of a black cab. And the driver, a man in his 50s with greying hair, is weaving through the maze of streets as if he were born on them. You glance at your phone, where Google Maps shows a confusing mess of roundabouts and alleys, but the driver doesn't even look at a GPS, he just knows. Left here, right there. Quick turn, shortcut, side street. Before you know it, you're at your destination, faster than the app predicted. You wonder, how on earth does he do that? What you don't realize is that you've just witnessed one of the greatest living experiments in neuroplasticity. This is the story of London's taxi drivers, their extraordinary brains, and what they can teach us about how learning at any age literally reshapes the mind. For decades, neuroscientists were puzzled by one simple question. Can learning physically change the brain's structure? Back then, the common belief was the brain develops in childhood. By adulthood, it's set in stone. You can learn facts and skills, but your brain's physical wiring doesn't really change. But then came the London cabbies, and they flipped this myth upside down. The knowledge in London to become a licensed taxi driver isn't easy. It's not just about knowing a few major streets. Drivers must master something called the knowledge. It's a brutal training system where they memorize. Over 25,000 streets within a 6-mile radius of Charing Cross, thousands of landmarks, from museums and parks to tiny cafes, the fastest routes through one of the world's most complex cities. And here's the kicker, they don't use GPS. On average, it takes 3 to 4 years of study. Aspiring cabbies ride scooters around the city, flashcards in hand, memorizing routes. They sit grueling oral exams where an examiner names 2 random points in London, and the candidate must recite the fastest route between them, turn by turn, street by street. It's so intense that only about half of those who begin ever finish, but those who do aren't just better drivers. They're walking proof of brain rewiring, the brain's GPS. The hippocampus neuroscientists were fascinated by the cabbies and decided to study their brains. They focused on a region called the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain. The hippocampus is like the brain's GPS. It helps us navigate, form spatial memories, and build mental maps of the world. When researchers scanned the brains of London taxi drivers, they discovered something astonishing. The hippocampus of cab drivers was physically larger than average. Not just slightly, significantly. The more years they had spent driving, the bigger this brain area became. It was the first concrete proof that intense learning and repeated practice can literally grow parts of the adult brain. Busting the fixed brain. This discovery demolished the old myth that the adult brain is fixed. For centuries, people said, old dogs can't learn new tricks. But here were men and women in their 40s, 50s, even 60s, reshaping their hippocampi through sheer practice. It wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It was neuroplasticity, the brain adapting to demand. Think about it. Just as lifting weights builds muscle, memorizing routes built the hippocampus. The brain was sculpted by experience, not by age. This meant learning never stops. Mark's story. Let's zoom in on one driver. Let's call him Mark. Mark was 47 when he decided to train for the knowledge. Most people thought he was crazy. Too old, they said. Your memory's not as sharp as it used to be. But Mark was determined. He'd always loved the city, loved the winding roads, and loved the challenge. At first, it was overwhelming. He would stare at maps for hours, tracing routes with his finger. But as soon as he looked away, the details blurred. He bought a scooter, taped maps to his wall, and carried notebooks everywhere. Slowly, painfully, he began to memorize. There were days he wanted to quit, days when he forgot everything under pressure. But something strange started happening. After a year, he realized he no longer needed to check the map as often. Landmarks started sticking in his mind. He could see the roads in his head. By the 3rd year, he had an entire mental map of London, an internal GPS. When he finally passed the exam, Mark said something fascinating. It feels like my brain has stretched, like I see the city differently now. It's inside me. A neuroscientist would agree his hippocampus had literally stretched. What it means for us now, you might be thinking, that's impressive, but I'm not planning to become a London cabbie. Here's the real takeaway. Learning changes the brain. Not just facts, but skills, languages, art, instruments, sports. Effort matters. The harder the challenge, the greater the brain growth. Taxi drivers didn't grow bigger hippocampi by accident. They worked for it. Age doesn't matter. Mark was almost 50. His brain still adapted. Yours can too. Whether you're learning to code, play piano, or speak Spanish, you're not just adding knowledge. You're reshaping your brain's wiring. The dark side of easy navigation now. Here's an interesting twist. Researchers also studied people who relied heavily on GPS apps like Google Maps. Guess what? Their hippocampi were smaller. When you outsource navigation to technology, your brain doesn't flex its spatial memory muscles. Over time, those circuits weaken. It's the same principle as any skill. Use it or lose it. So the next time you're tempted to follow GPS blindly, try switching it off. Force your brain to think, to build its own map. You might get lost once or twice, but your hippocampus will thank you. Practical ways to grow your hippocampus. Here's how you can apply the taxi driver principle to your own life. Take new routes. Don't always drive or walk the same way. Challenge your brain to navigate. Learn spatial skills. Try puzzles, orienteering, or even video games that require maps. Pick up a complex new skill, something that feels just beyond your reach. That's where growth happens. Ditch the easy crutches. Use your brain instead of always leaning on apps or shortcuts. Every time you stretch yourself, you're laying down new tracks in your brain. The bigger picture. The London taxi driver story isn't really about taxis. It's about potential. It shows us that memory is not static. The brain is not a machine with fixed parts. Growth is possible at any age. And perhaps most importantly, it proves that you are not limited by the brain you were born with. Back to that rainy London night. Let's return to that rainy evening in the cab. As you sit in the back seat, marveling at the driver's effortless navigation, you realize you're not just watching a skilled professional. You're sitting inside a living experiment in brain plasticity. Every turn, every shortcut, every landmark called to memory is the result of years of rewiring. His hippocampus has grown, changed, adapted, proof that the brain is alive, dynamic, and endlessly capable. And if his brain can change, so can yours. Closing in citasso the next time you're tempted to say, "So I'm too old to learn," or "My brain just doesn't work that way," think of London's taxi drivers. Think of Mark. Think of the living, breathing hippocampi steering black cabs through the chaos of the city, because your brain is not fixed. It's waiting for you to challenge it, to grow it, to rewire it. If this story inspired you and you want more real-life stories of neuroplasticity, resilience, and the incredible power of the mind, then don't miss out. Hit subscribe to our channel. That way, you'll never miss the next journey into the brain.